Hey guys, this is Courtney from Cosmic Clarity Astrology, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys about the Sagittarius full moon that's happening on May 23rd. And it's taking place a little bit before 3 degrees of Sag. And I looked up what the Sabian symbol is for that degree, and it came up that it was talking about two men playing chess. And so we're going to revisit that, but I thought that acted as an interesting image or symbolism that we can pull on for the rest of this interpretation. Okay, so full moons. First of all, full moons are generally about some kind of culmination, some kind of peak experience, a realization of something, even if it's just in your own mind, and usually some level of clarity coming to you. A full moon in Sagittarius is generally going to be about something related to our belief systems. Sagittarius is all about our movement forward. In medical astrology, it rules over our legs and our hips, basically everything literally propelling us forward in life. And so I feel like there's something here that we're going to have a realization about that concerns our forward movement and how our beliefs may play a role in that. Moving forward. And I really feel like this one plays off of the last new moon that we had in Taurus. One of the reasons I say that is because this moon, the ruler of this moon, is Jupiter, and Jupiter is still in Taurus. In fact, it's actually in a really pronounced position at 29 degrees of this sign, the very last degree of Taurus. And it's also sitting right next to Venus, also at 29 degrees of Taurus, which is not common. It's not common to have the ruler of the moon, with another planet. Both of these planets are considered benefic, so the most helpful, the most beneficial planets of the zodiac sitting together at the very last degree of a sign like Taurus. And so I'm seeing again some crossover from the Taurus new moon to this full moon because of this really potent Taurus energy that carries through both of these timelines. 29 degrees of Taurus is something that really stands out to me when I'm looking at the full moon chart. And that's because anytime we have a planet at the very first degree, which is 0 of a sign, or 29 degrees of a sign, that planet is really on its own kind of mission. It has a very potent energy in that person's life. It's called a critical degree or anaretic degree when it's at 29 degrees. And so it's critical because it is basically like you're about to transition into a totally new field, into a totally new country, into a totally new relationship, anything in your life. You're basically moving from one phase to another phase where you're going to have a completely different shift in energy because, of course, Taurus is totally different than Gemini, where the sun is. Taurus is a lot more, it's a fixed sign, so it's a lot more rigid in nature. And when it gets to 29 degrees, basically it's almost like this psychic buildup of really pure Taurus energy where you're having to confront with basically some of the maybe exaggerated forms of Taurus energy, and in order for you to kind of master them, it's almost like the big boss in a video game. You're really getting to the final stage where you have maybe gotten a lot of tools and understanding of this map or this game, and then you hit that final boss to put it all to the test. That is how I see a planet at 29 degrees of a sign. And so to have the ruler of this moon at 29 Taurus, and again with Venus here, I really feel like it's a relatively positive thing, although I have some tidbits about that might be somewhat negative. But I feel like it's relatively positive because it is concerning Venus and Jupiter, the two most positive planets. And it's almost like this last, again, positive and enhancing challenge of, are you going to make these changes? And I say changes because the sun is in Gemini. These planets are about to move into Gemini, but they can't move into Gemini before they fully understand the foundations of Taurus. Gemini is all about movement, it's about adaptability, it's about change. But before these planets can move into that energy, or before we can start to pick up the pace and move and adapt and shift, we first have to make sure that there are certain things in our life that we've been overly attached to that we're going to have to confront. So this is a Taurus theme, basically an attachment to things that make us feel comfortable, attachment to material things or a way of doing things. It's a sign that is quite habitual, that is a little bit, again, quite rigid in its way of doing things. And so there's something about this full moon where I feel like we're trying to pick up the pace. We're trying to make changes to our life. We're trying to realize certain manifestations. But there are certain beliefs that we are fully entrenched in, because again, this is a Sagittarius full moon. There are certain beliefs that we're entrenched in, or, modus operandi, am I saying that right? Our MO, basically, our way of doing things that isn't actually going to get us to what we want, because we need to be a little bit more adaptable. We need to be willing to kind of reinvent ourselves, redefine ourselves. And that was a lot around what this last new moon was talking about. We can manifest what we want, but we have to approach it differently. And I feel like that is being put to the test at this full moon, because maybe we realize that there's a way that we need to approach something differently. Maybe our finances, maybe our relationships, how we approach people, how we think about things. It's like we know that we need to do something differently in order to get different results, but we're still kind of holding on to this last little bit of energy where we're like, no, I don't want to make that change. No, I don't want to be uncomfortable. No, I don't want to take that risk, or, do whatever it takes to shatter what we're holding on to that has kept us quote unquote safe. But that safety isn't going to help us get to our next manifestation, essentially. And so what I see this full moon being is really helping us, again, kind of shatter this almost like an exoskeleton, where we've kind of compiled all these things that make us feel safe, that make us feel home, that make us feel comfortable, this habitual nature, and breaks down what truly isn't working. And I think also what can be a little bit difficult about these two planets together at 29 degrees is the fact that there's also a fixed star here called the Seven Sisters. It's a Pleiades star. And there's actually a lot of mythology all around this, from Japanese culture to Native American culture to Greek mythology. So there's a lot that you can look up around this if you're interested in learning more about this fixed star. But basically, this fixed star can have to deal with accidents, blindness, violence. So kind of like negative things, but it's most strongly associated with feminine energy. And I think that was often quite demonized in the past, which may be the reason for the correlation, or there might be another reason for that. But basically, there's a feminine energy and even a homosexuality to the star at 29 degrees of Taurus. So there could be themes around that coming up at this full moon that we have to contend with if we're not willing to maybe make certain changes, or if this just happens to be aspecting something volatile in your chart. You could have some kind of accident or something strange could happen like that, especially because Uranus is also quite close to Jupiter, and Uranus does tend to bring surprising or sudden things, which often are wrapped up in accidents. The other element of this, again, is just this really strong, potent feminine energy. And I think that this is very important, because this is something that I saw in the last new moon as well, where there's a strong focus on kind of this patience and respecting more of the process of the manifestation rather than the goal, rather than being overly fixated or oriented towards, what do I want? How can I get it right now? What's the end goal? It's almost like, how can I focus more on this process of going about getting what I want, realizing that that's what life really is. And then also, how do I find nourishment in that process? How do I actually open up and receive? How do I kind of regenerate myself? How do I heal myself without being so focused on, again, having to be there, having to be healed, fixing yourself, this kind of forceful, pushing type of energy. That's the exact opposite of what we want at the time of this full moon. And another reason I say that is because the moon is making this beautiful trine to Neptune, which has a very flowy, kind of gentle, compassionate energy. It doesn't rush the process. It doesn't put excessive pressure on the process either. This moon is also making a nice sextile, a tight sextile to Pluto, helping us become a lot more self-aware. Anytime we have a sextile with Pluto, it's generally going to help us in our psychological understandings of ourselves. So why am I maybe holding on to these things that I'm so close to letting go of, that I know my dream self is on the other side, but I just don't want to release my death grip? This Pluto analysis will help us really get down to the bottom of, why is this happening? What is my truth? What's underneath all of this? And with that Neptune, how can I maybe have some healing around this, so that if there are psychological traumas or things that we have fears around, that we're not trying to push through it, manhandle through it. It's like we're healing through it, or flowing through it, and allowing that to just happen. One of the reasons why I'm really warning against this kind of manhandling energy is because we do have Mars in Aries conjunct Chiron in Aries in the North Node all together. And this is a very masculine, maybe a little bit toxic kind of masculine energy. So all of us are a little bit prone to that right now, where wherever the North Node is, it can make things really big. And wherever Chiron is, it can bring about healing, or it could bring about wounding. And so with this Mars energy, it quite literally has to deal with men and the masculine energy within ourselves. So there is some wounding and kind of excessive energy around this, where again, we could have our own wounded masculine really come out. This is going to be especially evident through our egos and our kind of sense of self, because I think, you know, this really relates a lot to when people are up-leveling their life. They have, in many ways, an ego death as they confront a new version of themselves. It's like their next level devil. They have to really be able to have an ego death and let go of who they used to be, how they used to see themselves, how they used to do things. And I think that that could be part of this with having Mars in Aries, is how do we redefine ourselves? And sometimes there can be the wounded aspect of ourselves that kind of rears its ugly head and has a statement to say, or has something to say about us making different choices. It could also bring about insecurity, self-doubt. So it could hurt our ego in that sense. We might find that we are more hostile, or that other people are more hostile, especially wherever you have Aries in your chart. If you know which house that falls in, that area of life is likely, or more likely, to have some type of conflict surrounding it. And again, this could be internal, or this could be something you're meeting externally. But there's a general sense of needing to confront our desire to hold on when we have to let go, and what inside of us, especially concerning masculine energy, will freak out as a result of us needing or wanting to make this transition or this change. And so if you are resistant to change, ask yourself why, and maybe speak to that part of yourself that is resisting it. One of the cards that I pulled for this full moon was the box, and it was really talking about how our structures in our life can be very supportive for us, but then they can also become outdated and quite rigid. And it's often necessary to think outside of the box and to break and rebuild the box various times throughout the year, throughout our life. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that I would love for you guys to self-reflect on, is how is maybe the box of my current reality, maybe it's my routine, maybe it's the current way that I view like making money, or view relationships, or view how I should spend my time or my career, or maybe it's how I define success, or what I really value, or what I'm looking for in somebody. There's something about this area of our life where we could have defined that quite strongly, especially based off of past experiences, past traumas, past pains. We often can have definitions crop up that are really more based off of trying to avoid that experience again, or having some type of fear. So it's really helpful to reflect on how much of that is truly what I value, how much of that is based off of the past, how much of it needs to be upgraded or changed, so that our structure, our definition of what we're even moving towards, or how we can even move towards it, so that we can challenge that in a healthy and responsible way. Because ultimately, where the sun is, it's about, in Gemini, it's all about asking questions. It's this curiosity. What is a different way that I could view my life, or myself, or the way that I move through life? And with the moon in Sagittarius, we often, I think about Sagittarius is they often have a lot of life experience that kind of molds them into having a perspective, and then they can be a little bit, how do I say this? They can be a little bit dogmatic or judgmental even of their beliefs, not judging themselves, but judging others who think differently. And so there could be this kind of egoic identification with one's belief system. And I understand why, because they have had, again, so many experiences that then translate into this belief. You know, if you've always had men be mean to you, then you might have a belief that men are mean, for example, and that makes sense for your paradigm and your world. But that doesn't make sense for everybody. And that's the Gemini energy, where we can start to look at how other people live their lives and question ourselves in a healthy and responsible way, where we can redefine what we want to believe, because maybe our current belief has been a cage and has been restricting us. Maybe our current belief that men are mean is actually holding us back from meeting the right type of person, and we keep attracting more mean people because that is the way that we view life. And so that could be about anything, but especially it's going to be about Taurus related topics, which have to deal with our self-image and our self-worth, beauty and aesthetics, our relationship with money, our relationship with nature and the planet, our ability to work in a more consistent, stable way and have kind of this long-term stability or sustainability to it. It also can very much relate to the feminine energy and our ability to be, you know, to receive and to be taken care of and to be just respected and loved just for who we are and for existing. So there can be many beliefs that we have around these things that are actually holding us back, and they could be formed from things in the past that were unpleasant or painful. And so I think it's just really worth asking yourself questions about those areas of your life and seeing if they can play a role in your lack of progress, your lack of forward movement, which is again very Sagittarius, because we are in a moment of reinvention. And if we are super identified with an old version of ourselves or old paradigms, that reinvention is going to, again, be a lot harder to maintain or to do. So another thing that you can ask yourself is, instead of like, what do I need to change? What I need to fix? Is what nourishes me? What people, activities, practices, places, what things do I do with my time that really nourishes my soul on a long-term level? And I think that once you're able to ask yourself that question, it will guide you into the next steps around if something doesn't nourish you, and it will help you identify that. And I think you can kind of crowd out the things that don't nourish you or that take away from you with the things that do, instead of trying to fix or heal or do all this work, right? It's almost like, well, if I don't want to, be drinking soda every day, maybe I'll drink tea every day because that nourishes me. So it's like you're replacing this thing that's hard or hard on you with something that's nourishing for you. So it's like you don't have to heal all this stuff. You can just make that simple switch. And I think that that's a message here as well. So maybe things could be simpler than, we think they are. So those are generally the messages I wanted to share. I guess just a couple more things. First of all, I did mention at the start of this video that this is taking place at the Sabian symbol around 3 degrees Sag, which is two men playing chess. And I do feel like there's something here where we can rely a little bit more on strategy and logic. If you look at your past and you're getting a certain result, you have to almost take emotions out of it and look at this quite strategically or logically, which is a very Gemini Sagittarius thing to do, of let's gather the data and the information and particularly see what will get us to where we want to go and take maybe some of the emotional experiences out of it. I also think that there's something here about discipline and mastery, self-mastery, self-fulfillment that comes from people perfecting such a challenging art like chess. So I definitely think that that's a huge message in this as well, as it's not just redefining ourselves mentally, but it's also following through action-wise and making sure that the things that we're doing aligns with what we want to believe or who we want to be, and eventually developing mastery as a result of that dedication, which is a challenge, with 29 Taurus where Jupiter and Venus is. It is a challenge sometimes to to remain, to sustain, which is a Taurus theme. So that's definitely something that can come up for us is, can I sustain this discipline? Can I sustain this movement towards this goal or this idea? The other thing is that, you know, Gemini and Sagittarius are mutable signs, which are very changeable. And so again, that sustaining aspect, I think, is really going to come into play because these signs are not always the best at maintaining something long term, but they are necessary and helpful to have us shake up the things that we're overly attached to, which is the medicine to the Taurus 29 degrees energy. So we really need both of them. We need to be able to sustain what works and leave what doesn't. And so we need this blend of Taurus, Gemini, Sag that the chart is giving us. So that is what I'm seeing, but I am going to go over what this looks like for every single, you know, rising sign, and definitely watch for your sun sign. Sometimes I like to watch for my moon sign too. I find that is relevant on a deeper, more intrinsic level. And if you're interested also, I am now offering 2 different types of readings, a medical astrology reading and a fertility reading, which are temporarily discounted. So if you are interested in either of those, you can check those out down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list. And I hope you guys have a great day.